Welcome to the Empress Lioness, a sacred space where the spirit roars and the soul remembers everything. In each episode, we sit with visionaries, founders, creators, and healers. I'm your host, Karen Mitchell. So there comes a moment in every woman's life when striving no longer works, when surviving feels louder than living, and she realizes what she's been searching for has been asking her to arrive all along. Today's conversation is about presence, not performance, not perfection, but the sacred act of staying with yourself long enough to hear what your soul has been whispering. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the Empress Lioness podcast, the sanctuary where women rise into their power, reclaim their voice, and return home to who they truly are. I'm your host, Karen Mitchell, the Empress Lioness, and today I am honored to sit with a woman whose energy carries stillness, depth, and truth. A woman whose work reminds us that presence is not passive. It is powerful. Joining me today is Naima Elias, a woman whose path speaks to embodiment, awareness, and becoming. She's not here to impress you. She is here to meet you. And I believe her story will gently open something within you that has been waiting to be acknowledged. Naima, welcome to the Empress Lioness podcast. We're so glad you're here.
Girl, wow. That intro is a whole word. Like, I feel like I just need to meditate on that. That was beautiful. Sorry. Yes. Thank you.
Listen, nothing else for a dynamic woman like yourself. I couldn't do anything less. But before we talk about what you do in the world today, I want to take our listeners back to where you actually came from. Who were you before life asked you to become strong, to become bold, to become enduring?
So I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I would say if we go back to 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old me, we go back to fear, a lot of fear. I grew up in a community where there was a lot of sort of threat of violence. And I remember, running home from school, hoping that people wouldn't see me. I remember trying to hide, trying to be invisible. My happiest place was behind a book, right? I didn't want to interact with people. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to read my books and happily disappear into my story. I have 5 siblings. We were raised from a very early age that this was our society. My dad was very clear on your brothers are the only friends you ever need. So there was this really cool community within my house that was kind of amazing. My parents were both studying psychology when I was in, 3rd and 4th grade. So there were a lot of experiments, a lot of sort of
Yeah.
figuring out how children work by like poking at us. And we had these really great adventures. Layer that with, extreme poverty. We lived on the verge of homelessness for my entire childhood. And my parents were able to somehow, grace of God, always land in a house and never without one. And we also, we got oatmeal for dinner as a treat, right? Like, it's breakfast for dinner. Yay. Right. And really that was the only food. Right. And so my parents were able to turn what could have been really challenging situations into opportunities for wonder. And so the sort of juxtaposition of the challenges and the struggle and the constant fight with the imagination and the creativity and the cool experiences that they were able to cultivate for us. So that's the
Wow.
foundation.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah.
And it's so humbling when you come from a foundation like that. There are a lot of us that do. But what part of yourself did you learn to quiet in order to survive out there, especially in Chicago?
All of myself, I just wanted to be invisible. And I worked really hard to be invisible. I worked really hard academically because I knew that there was something else. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to kind of figure that out, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
knew grades were kind of the only path to be able to find whatever that was. I, I don't know. I was always too much, right? So I was always being told, don't bring so much attention to yourself and don't talk so much. And And, I always have to say everything that comes to your mind. And I'm like, yo, I'm only saying a tenth of what's coming to my mind. I promise you,
Right?
like, if that's too much, then And so there was a lot of sort of figuring out how not to overshadow, how to not make other people uncomfortable, how to, and that was, who I became. Like, how do I learned early how to diminish myself in order to make space for other people.
And that's that's the message I try to bring every day on this podcast, because I find that a lot of women, including myself, we always try to dim our light to make others around us feel comfortable. But time out for that. There's no more dimming lights. I'm wanting these women to be who they are in the fullness of who they are. So when did
They
you realize you were only functioning but not fully living like we are doing right now as women?
I think there's moments, right? There's a lot of different moments and you look up and you sort of see yourself and think, how did I get here? And so we can jump forward to I'm married, I've got 3 kids, I just been laid off and I'm living in Kansas. I'm not making enough money to feed my family. I'm going to food pantries. I'm on WIC, like everything was a struggle. And I just, what happened, right? Like how did this
Yeah.
become my life?
Yeah.
And so that was a moment, right? I was able to kind of manifest transition out of that and get myself back to Boston, get myself back into gainful employment and, and a little bit more sort of financial stability. Um, and then I'm climbing the corporate ladder and I'm working really hard to deliver on everybody else's needs. And I'm raising 3 kids
Yeah.
and, as a single mom and doing all the things. And now we have another moment where I'm utterly exhausted and everything
Yep.
is overwhelming and I'm delivering for everybody else and I'm not delivering for myself. And I'm getting glimpses of the space that I want to be. I'm getting glimpses of the things that I want to do that brings me joy in doing some coaching, doing some mentorship, that kind of thing. It wasn't my job. It was this thing that I did on the side that made me smile. But I had to create time to do that. And in order to get to do that, I had to deliver on all of these sort of business objectives and the corporate stuff that needed to be done. So this had to be done in order for me to get to do this over here. And then I found myself at a crossroads and was working on a project. That project was canceled, and it was time for me to kind of think about what was going to be next. But I had some capacity, I had some time,
Yeah.
and time is a gift, right?
It is.
I started a meditation program. So first, I started therapy
Okay.
because my husband told me, he was my fiance at the time. He told me, "You're angry all the time, and it's starting to kind of explode all over everything." So I started therapy to deal with my rage. And then I read this book called The Big Leap. And the first time I read it, it helped me to kind of think about my imposter syndrome and how I felt like I wasn't good enough, right? And how I was sitting in the world and how I was showing up in the world. So it was a really powerful experience to read that. And then I did a 30-day meditation challenge and I learned how to meditate, which was something that I had never been able to do up until that point. So now I'm thinking about how I sit in the world. I'm working with a therapist to try not to be mad all the time. And I start meditating and I'm learning how to sit with myself. I'm learning how to sit in the discomfort and really start to unpack that. And then I did a 90-day nutrition challenge. And before doing that, I was tired all the time. I was physically sick. I was sick after every single meal, literally every meal.
Wow.
I felt sick. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm just eating too much or blah, blah, blah. And then I go through this whole nutrition challenge and I realize I'm eating all the wrong things, like things that are literally just poisoning my body every
Wow.
single week. Right. So I go through the nutrition challenge. So now I'm getting my mind right. I'm getting my body right. I'm starting to balance. And then it's time for me to make a decision. Right. The company is like, I'm on the list for a layoff. I could choose to stay and go back in and get back into the intensity of it, or I could accept the path and continue to move on. And I was trying to figure it out, but now I'm not mad anymore. I'm not so tired. I'm not fighting anymore. I feel physically better. I know how to sit quietly and kind of think about like how do I want to exist in the world?
Yeah.
And then I started to manifest my reality, accept the layoff, take that next step forward and really step out into the unknown. This is terrifying, right? I didn't have, right? I had very little savings. I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't know what was going to be next, but I knew that the next step was to step out into the unknown. So fully terrifying. I got 3 kids. First one's getting ready to go to college at the end of that year. Like it was a lot,
Yeah.
but I took the layoff. And then I started having real conversations with friends and colleagues and corporations. And I'm interviewing and I'm talking to folks and I'm really getting a sense for what's the need, right? And the need literally was what I wanted to do, right? This coaching, this developing, this cultivating, this helping people to understand what's possible.
Yeah.
The work that I had done that I was doing on the side and that was bringing me joy, like that could be my,
Yeah.
and that was it. So you asked me about a moment. There were a number of different moments where I looked up and said, this is not my life. This is not my story. And then I talk about creating capacity. I had to create the capacity for the risk. You can't take a risk if you are on 10, right? If you are stressed and tired and angry and
Yeah.
overwhelmed, everything is too much. If you're living at 10, there's no capacity to play, right? And so the meditation and the therapy and the nutrition and all of those things like brought me down and created that space where I had the capacity to take a risk that was completely outside of my comfort zone at every point in my life up until then. And then I started a
Wow.
business. Yeah.
Wow. And you know what? Since I've been doing this and speaking with a lot of women, they always get that feeling of there got to be something more. There got to be something more. I don't care
Well,
what position you're in, where you're at in your career, you can be successful and there's always something missing, you know? So many women confuse strength with endurance. But what
mhm,
you're describing is courage, the courage to remain Naima, who you
mhm.
truly are on the inside. So, what did your healing demand, or what did your healing demand that your old identity resisted from you?
Healing demand. I love that question. So I think where I was interesting. I was too much and I was
Yeah.
also not right? How do you fit in both of those at the same time, right? Like it was a whole contradiction in my body, right?
Yeah.
You show up and everybody's just like, that's a lot, Naima. That's a lot. That's a lot. Like, why are you a lot? Why are you always so much, right? And so I think the reaction from the world was that I was too much. And my reaction for myself was that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I don't know enough. I'm not capable enough, right? And both of those were problematic, right? Because I was operating in spaces that needed me to be less, right? To sort of quiet down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even in those spaces, I felt like I wasn't good enough. And so going through the healing journey meant making space for me to accept exactly where I am, right? That this is who I am. And that if I'm in spaces where I'm too much, I'm in the wrong spaces, right? And if I'm feeling like I'm not enough, then I need to do that work and recognize who I am and the value that I bring. And that's really hard work, right? When you feel like you're less than, it's hard to get to a place where you can truly accept that you are more than enough, that you are
Yeah.
extraordinary, right? And so I needed to be reminded that I'm extraordinary.
Wow. But what practices did you that brought you back to yourself? Like I said, not as really too much as a concept, but as a lived experience as well.
So practices, things like getting up and meditating every morning and meditating before I went to bed every night, right? So I was in a season where it was, starting the day and closing the day in calm and really being able to kind of sit in that peace, right? So in the morning, it was manifesting and envisioning my life and my day. Who am I and how do I want to show up in this day? And in the evening, it was gratitude and recognition, right? These are the ways that I have made the world a better place today. And whether it's for the world, for my company, for my kids, or just for me, like what are the things that I did that made the world a better place today? So manifesting and recognizing and manifesting and recognizing and manifesting and recognizing and those small things. And the meditation can be 10 minutes, it can be 15
Yeah.
minutes. We're not
I'm your host, Karen Mitchell.